Welcome, everybody. My name is Robert, and with me is
Peter!
And together we form the Avengers team. No, not the Avengers team. We don't want to be sued.
Bo Pete.
The Bo P team, not the Avengers. Not Jedis, not the A team, not Justice League. Just
Maybe the B
Bo
team?
Bo Pete, the B team, the B talk team. We're back again. The world's still here. It's just holding on by a single thread. The world's not ending yet. Sometimes it feels like that when we all get up in the morning and see what's going on in the news. In Australia, Anthony Albanese is now trying to seal a deal with PNG. He's done the big things here because that's going to stop China invading Australia possibly one day, I guess. It looks good. I don't know why that's so important. But anyway, it's in the news. Don't be skeptical. Trump accuses ABC journalists of hurting Australia and says he'll report him to Albanese. Ooh, okay, good on you, Trump. Frying away a bit. That's in the news. Oh, here we go. The Charlie Kirk murder. Now we know who it is, of course. Our own little deranged left-wing person, according to the media. Is that the case? He does seem, in terms of his profile, to be someone that obviously had mental issues. Tyler Robertson, 22 years old, seems to have come from a good family, but somewhere went off the rails. Who knows how? And what else is happening in the world? Peter, what's exciting you or intriguing you out there in the news?
I actually wanted to comment about the killer of Charlie Kirk, or the assassin.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, tell me, what do you know? What do you know
You
about?
said that he was mentally ill.
Well, that's a really interesting one. Anyone that kills someone is mentally ill, aren't they? I heard that something
Exactly.
being said. Yeah.
I believe that's exactly it. If, like, you're not in your right state of mind to when you murder someone else, like whether it's for an assassination, whether it's for, even if it's a crime of passion, I mean, you're not in your mind is not 100% there, so you are mentally ill in that state.
Can I give you? I was thinking about this today. This whole excuses or labeling, not excuses, where we mask the brutal reality. Or anyway, I might be going off, not really on a tangent here, but I was thinking about an idea. You know how you had your stones to hell? What was it that pavers to hell? Remember? Or previous, what was
The path to hell is paved with good intentions.
it? Good intent? Yeah, which is brilliant, by the way. I'm not trying to make fun of it. I
No,
often
no,
think
that's actually
about
a
it.
saying. I can't take
Yeah.
credit for it.
I visualize it rather than know the saying, if that makes sense. I can actually visualize that, with someone's, each step you're taking, literally, which you think is in a good way, is getting you to hell. That's what I get out of it. Because I know of so many cases where things have seemed like for the better and then have ended up being not too good. A bit like Palpatine.
Yeah, well, the way I look at it, it's very similar to you. But when you're paving a path, for example, it takes time to pave the
Yeah.
path.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So all the good intentions,
Mm.
while individually they are good intentions, overall they pave that pathway to hell.
Yeah. Because maybe you're not looking at the end where that path's going. You're too consumed in trying to lay
Exactly.
those pavers nice and square and level, which I'm not very good at. I've done that in my backyard. Here's one for you that I thought of. Maybe this is my little pearls of wisdom. I was thinking about it. Now, this isn't quoted from someone. If someone else has said this in the past, it could be just one of those subconscious moments. Evil was feared, evil is now a friend. What do you think of that? I mean, it's hard because I was hearing recently, which was a very good point being made, that we live in a society where we think things are worse than ever at this point in time. But if you go back in history, rapings and pillaging of villages and killing of civilizations and destructions and wiping out, annihilating a whole civilization just about isn't new, and if anything was a lot worse and more rampant in human history in the past if you study history closely. So it's just our context of where we live in our little cocooned moment in history. Sometimes we might think things are worse. But I look at it at the moment where, yeah, I am going to point fingers possibly to one side of politics. And I think of the left. And I think the left seem to be more compromising. And I'm saying the far left. The far left. Okay, when I'm saying this. Let me emphasize that. The far left. It's
Compromising in what way?
like things that we used to see as possibly not right as acceptable and motivated by, I guess, virtual signaling. And I guess it's hard, and I'm umming and ahhing because there's so much of what's said by the far left that you think for a moment, yeah, that is a good point, and we've taken positive steps and inroads towards equality. But as someone that has grown up in a conservative family and upbringing, I do struggle, and it's I feel obligated to not speak up about it in the sense that, how do I put it? Is it going away from my faith? Is it wrong of me not to judge? That's the problem. But if you speak up, that's what I worry about when people say, "Oh, I'm opposed to anyone that thinks abortion's okay," and they say it in a judgmental way, and they remove the freedom of speech in saying that. I'm not talking about that being as evil, by the way, but I guess I look at Hamas as a good example and what that represents as an example. And I I I I certainly agree with, I don't like the idea if you go into what's happening at the moment, the annihilation, if that's what's really, really, really happening. And the pictures certainly show that in the stories and accounts, and very outspoken people saying where you have Israel going in there, the IDF, and causing a lot of damage. No one wants to see that. No one wants to see human life taken.
Yeah, I will add to that though. Like you might see cities like or neighborhoods, that are destroyed in Gaza, but they are getting leaflet drops, beforehand in areas that are going to be attacked.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and it gets washed over by, and not just the far left, the left. And see, for you and I living in Australia, we couldn't be more further away from the action. Yeah.
Yeah,
And we're relying on news sources. And we were having this conversation, weren't we, off here today with
yep.
another colleague. And who's telling us what's really going on in the Gaza? Do we really know? Do we really, really know? People go, yeah, oh yeah, we do. Oh yeah, the UN help. What is it? Peacekeepers that are there, they're accounting for it. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, and are they telling the truth? I don't know. Are they? Are they not? I don't know. I'm not saying that they're not, by the way.
Uh, UN peacekeepers stationed in Gaza.
Well, who was it that was mentioned today? That who is accounting for these deaths that are occurring in the Gaza, as an example? And we're not doubting there aren't deaths, by the way, in the Gaza. Yeah, we're not here having a show here where we're saying, oh yeah, it's not really happening. We're not some sort of loopy, crazy to the extent of doubting that much. But I don't know what to believe. I guess what's coming out of it.
What makes it hard is, when you look at all the deep fakes that are available right now, the capability of faking footage. This is from both sides. Like, I'm not saying it's one or the other. So you look at a story and you can literally fake whatever you want and make it look like it's real. And unless you're actually there, do you actually know what's going on, really?
That's what I fear and worry about, though. We just don't know. And it's almost a case of all we can do, like we've been doing on our episodes, is right, Google News or Apple News or ABC News or CNN or Fox News or independent sources, podcasts. We're relying on that. News has always been like that. We'd be blunt and naive to think it hasn't ever been any different. It's just that it was easier not to think that deep in the past. I have shied away from the evil was feared and evil is now friend, not being specific enough. I think what I mean by the evil bit is, in many ways, like acts of evil such as manners, moral comments. We're talking about the Charlie Kirk, incident. You brought it up, about the person that's involved. I just have found the comments shocking about And I do see it as acts of evil from anyone. And I've got to be careful because I can't judge. I'm not God, yeah? Because I am evil. I sin, okay? I have to say that I'm a sinner. So I'm not here to judge who sins and who doesn't. I'm not in a position to 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 judge others. But when we talk about manners and comments online, when people say, "Oh, sucked in, he's dead," you know, "Oh, that's good, he's dead. He got another one gone. That's fantastic," you know. That's to me, that's evil. And that was feared in the sense that to to talk that way or be that way. But now it's like a friend to be like that. You know, it will get my clicks, I'll get my attention
Yeah.
seeking almost.
Yeah, you know what I feel when it comes to comments like that? It's actually exposing what people feel in their subconscious. So while, people that were, cheering and lauding when Charlie Kirk was assassinated, those people, while it might not have been a conscious thought, subconsciously thought, have that mindset to be like, hey, I really want to do this to this person because I think he's XYZ, and I don't agree with him, and I want to do that. So it's similar to what you see, with certain groups chanting when something bad happens to another country and
Yeah.
cheering. It's because it's they believe in that and want to do that themselves, but don't have the resources, capability, or just not capable of carrying that out for whatever reason.
I struggle with there's two, the Bible itself is split in two, in my opinion. Obviously, there's the New Testament, the Old Testament, but they are they can be so distinctly different when you study them, because we have eye for an eye in the Old Testament. These are amazing battles that have happened in the Old Testament, and then we have this New Testament, Jesus Christ, and forgiving everybody. For us to do that, the Our Father has those words in there: forgive those who trespass against us, to love your enemies.
Can I ask you a question in relation to that though? When you consider the Old Testament, especially an eye for an eye, and then when you incorporate the New Testament, where in terms of forgive, does it forget?
Well, it says turn the other cheek. Does that
Does it
not
say
mean
does it
that?
say to forget?
Never thought of the word forget as part of it.
No, I can't see that anywhere. So forgiveness is one thing, right? So you forgive. It doesn't mean that you allow the same thing to repeat itself as well, right? So where you've got forgiveness and turning the other cheek is more on the face of, say you get punched in the cheek, right? You forgive the person and you turn the other cheek because you're showing your best side, because obviously you don't want to show a bloodied side that's been all bloodied up from the previous punch, right?
Yeah,
So it's about your best foot forward rather than, showing your bloody side and saying, hey, look what this person done to me. I'll never forget this. It's more like, I'll never forget this, but I'm going to come forward and, give the best intentions going forward.
yeah. I'm looking it up, as you're talking, and I found here something in Corinthians, if I'm right. People like to say that I don't know if this isn't a quote from Corinthians,
Yeah, yeah.
forgive but not forget. Is that Corinthians somewhere there? St. Paul to the Corinthians, of course.
Yeah, I wouldn't remember. But it's one of the things that, I've always interpreted from my studies is,
Yeah.
yeah. So you do forgive, you do turn the other cheek, but it doesn't mean that you forget.
Well, Matthew says 6:15, if you do not, but if you do not forgive others their sins, your Father will not forgive your sins. That doesn't answer it, does it? Sorry, I thought he says something about forget there. Okay, because that's a really valid point about forgetting.
And that's the hardest part to do. So forgiveness. Well, I feel forgiveness and forgetting are kind of one in the same, but a lot of people interpret forgiveness as in, I guess, accepting an apology or reparations from another person, where that's not what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is forgetting what has happened to you in terms of the pain that it's caused you and letting that go.
Let's go deep with this. Jesus says on the cross, obviously, forgive them for they do not know what they are doing. Roughly says something, doesn't it? I think it's in John, if I'm correct, or John. Um, Where does that sit?
in terms of
This forgiving and forgetting.
yeah. Well, it's hard. Like when you look at the scripture as well. Even if you look at say the Old Testament
It's in
before
Luke.
Jesus.
Sorry, in Luke, so I don't get corrected by
Yeah,
you.
yeah. But the reason why I say if you look at like the Bible up until Jesus' death, right? God technically hasn't forgiven us until Jesus' death.
And then the resurrection's important in that. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
is that right?
yeah,
So Jesus, according to Isaiah, it actually comes from a prophecy fulfillment from the Old Testament. This is where it's amazing, the New Testament, where it actually is fulfilling from the Old Testament, where Isaiah says he bore the sin of many and made intercessions for the transgressors. He was fulfilling the Old Testament prophecy when he says that. I remember that being said. It's quite poetic, isn't it, in a way,
mm,
when you think about it?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Do you think maybe part of our problems when we talk about evil being feared was feared is that having religion and faith, there was that fear, but now I guess religion's become a friend in that. It's like being a parent, like you kid, what they say when you raise your children, you can't be their friends, you have to be their parents. I've always thought of it that way, and
Yeah.
it's deeper and it's more meaningful being a parent, but you're not going to make the the choices that make them happy always at the time. Do you see that as the evil? Maybe we don't have that fear of God. God is now a friend, but God is a friend with a small g, not a capital G anymore.
Yeah, yeah. I think the softening. But look, people could argue that even the New Testament is a softening of God's will as well. So this is like
Yeah.
from 2,000 years, and we've got a whole religion formed on the back of that as well. So that's like an argument people can make. But now going to what you said more directly, I do feel that there's been like a very heavy softening since I've been around, and that's alive and kicking, so to speak.
So let's look at this deeper. Why is God different in the old and the new? What in terms of obviously in the Old Testament we have the Noah flood, of course, that occurs, and then a covenant is made with Noah to never do that again, to flood the earth. And that's done through the rainbow that's shown in
Mm,
the sky. There's a bit of irony there now because the rainbow is now used, what is it, for gay pride, they say, don't they?
yeah.
And the word pride itself, well, I mean, I don't know, is that a positive virtue to have pride?
But doesn't that go against one of the commandments?
Now, the definition of pride, a feeling of deep pleasure or satisfaction derived from one's own achievement of those with whom one is closely associated. It's almost like a me, myself, and I. Is that right? When you talk about
Well,
pride,
yeah, and also wasn't the biggest I guess conflict between God and Lucifer um was Lucifer's pride.
we could get in trouble here, couldn't we? Because we sound like we're obviously bringing up the rainbow and what he represents now. But how can I not look at it that way when that was and is in the Old Testament?
Yeah, look to give some understanding from another point of view.
Yeah, help me, please.
I guess the rainbow represents, look, if this is how I view it, looking at it from a scientific point of view, when light scatters from like water droplets in the sky, it forms a
Okay.
rainbow, right?
Yeah.
So when you join all those colors together, we're all the same, or we're all one, right? So
Okay.
that's why the
Yeah.
rainbow represents everyone, and when you join together, you're just white light. So
Yeah. So it's
yeah.
not mocking. It's not mocking, is it? Of course, it's not. It's not
It
mocking.
depends on how you want to view it, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's why I say, look, I don't take too much offense because I can view it from a scientific point of view, and
And I
there's
guess
some meaning to it. Whether or not that's the meaning, I can't tell you, but that's how I kind of view it.
it's a nice way. And actually, I was going, yeah, because I've heard that before. This idea of someone I can't remember did a presentation I once listened to about the rainbow, how it's a form of inclusion, or as a metaphor towards what you're saying. There's splitting and separate, we're all separated in a way, but is that right? And unified
Well,
together.
it's all the colors. All the colors in the rainbow make up light. So we're never actually separated. So every element, I guess, of humanity, whether you're gay, lesbian, bi, I'm not going to go through every letter, but everyone knows what it is. together we come from the same place, which is white light, So
And so the
yeah,
so the colors reflect the diversity of LGBTQ plus
well, the colors
team,
represent one aspect
yeah,
of humanity.
and the
Pick
spectrum
red
of
for L,
yeah.
and go on, so on and so forth.
Yeah, okay. You can see how it can be looked at by a fundamentalist as, I guess, a making fun of God, or not necessarily making fun of God, but yeah. Well, I guess I'm going down this way because, all right, let's look at another example of, and this is unfair and unkind because we narrowed it down to the LGBTQ plus community. This examples of the fear of God not being there, and it's not they're not responsible for that, of course not. But we're weighing it up. We're talking aloud here. If you look at the Olympics that just passed and some of the symbolism that was used there, and that really upset uh, a lot of people of Catholic faith. How did you read that one where they reenacted the Last Supper in terms of part of the presentation and the opening ceremony?
Kind of just walked away. Like I'm like, what am I watching? Like, so I guess I had a feeling of kind of like dare I say, disgust with what I was seeing on the TV. So I just walked away from it. But
In what way were you disgusted?
for me, I just feel I don't understand why people have to go for symbolism like that. Or what the purpose is of it.
I guess that's where I was going with the rainbow. But you've explained it, and in terms of, I thought, would there be other ways of
100%.
symbolizing LGBTQ plus pride? Why use the rainbow when it's already been used in a religious sense? But I'm sure that was never the intention to deliberately mock Christianity. But the Olympics example, I can't see it any other way.
One thing where I kind of find some solemn is I've always found that generally people who are onto something or on the right path are the ones that get mocked, right? So a good example, right? If you're committed in a business idea, so you have an idea for a business and you want to make money, what's the first thing that people are going to tell you when you start talking to them about your idea?
How it's not going to work.
Exactly. And you might be
You're not going
mocked,
to
you might
be,
be
yeah,
ridiculed,
yeah, it's not going to
right?
work. Yeah,
People are going to make fun of you. And look,
yeah,
chances are, like, when it comes to this example that I'm using, right, you might fail. But if you keep persisting, you'll find something that works and you'll still be mocked, right? And where I'm going with this is what I say, if Christianity is being mocked, I feel it proves the point that it's actually onto something that's real. And look, people might not agree with that, but that's just kind of how it makes me feel when I see stuff like that, and I don't necessarily have to kind of go to the streets with my disgust. I can silently be disgusted in what I see and move on with my life.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. I just can't help thinking about how in other religions they're too afraid. You know where I'm going with this, don't you?
Mm,
They
yeah,
wouldn't
yeah,
dare. They wouldn't dare represent the Prophet Muhammad, would they? People.
yeah. But going based on my analogy, what would that mean then?
I'm pausing here because where you going in terms of legitimacy of the religions? Is that where you're going?
Well, if what other, like, if you take religion out, and look at, say, governments, so these are, or places of authority. You've had certain regimes throughout history where if you ridiculed the leaders, things wouldn't fare well for you. And what ended up happening to all those regimes and governments?
Yeah, I don't look in terms of I I kind of look at it like the fact that in Christian, so I'll take that legitimacy back because obviously we're talking aloud here, and I'm questioning. It was a sincere question. Of course, it wasn't a statement because again, in my faith of Christianity, I'm not to judge others or any other faiths. I'm to be inclusive. Quite the opposite. It was a question I was putting there. But I look at it in terms of Christianity has this unique New Testament of Christ in terms of forgiving, loving your enemy, turning the other cheek, and it's kind of taken advantage of. Whilst in why I said Islam is that it's not necessarily. I'm sure I know there's forgiveness and inclusivity in Islam as well. Don't get me wrong, but it's well, let's put it this way, be candid about it. What would be the reaction? Because there have been examples of, I think I'm thinking of the example in France where there was a silly cartoon comment making fun of the Prophet Muhammad. And he was silly and he was insulting, unequivocally. Similar to was silly and insulting the Olympics in the same vein. And there was reaction. And not the reaction, unfortunately, it did lead to violence. Do you remember that?
Vaguely,
I think
vaguely.
there was a beheading that occurred.
Yeah.
But, and I'm not saying that because Christians don't do that and Muslims do, or vice versa. Muslims don't do that and Christians do, because we can give many examples in history where Christians have been barbaric. Yeah, true.
Oh, look, I don't think there's many religions that can say that their past wasn't paved with bloodshed.
Yeah, paved with bloodshed. Yeah, that's a better word because it's you use the word barbaric, you can come across as judging. And unfortunately, under the banner of religion, sometimes violence entwines and finds itself. I mean, you could almost argue the school of thought with America fighting the axis of evil in recent times and the blood that would have been shed for that. Afghanistan, which then obviously filtered through to Iraq, that a lot of that was a real Old Testament view of, you could say, an eye for an eye because of September 11, but certainly was under the guise of it's our God given right, God bless America. And when we say God, we're talking about the Christian God that is, which is changing and evolving, as we know. A lot of countries are becoming more and more agnostic and not of a particular faith, of course. But that's, I guess, the backbone in modern history of America, isn't it, built on Christian faith? And so you would argue many Western cultures up to this point.
Yeah, yeah. Well, see, it's funny that you mention the changing God in Christianity.
Mm.
I always felt that our God has always been the same. What actually changed was the focus of the religion. Because if you look at the Old Testament,
Okay, interesting.
if you look at the Old Testaments, like there's a lot of interaction of God to people, right? So there's that direct.
To the chosen people,
That's
Israel.
correct.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's right.
So and you like read it throughout the Old Testament, and when you go to the New Testament with Jesus,
More
God
inclusive.
doesn't even talk to Jesus.
It's more inclusive, but I mean, Jesus is not just with certain chosen people that are uniquely fit a certain trait. He spends time with sinners, with lepers, with the downtrodden. So it comes across as a more accessible God in a way, accessible for anyone that follows the light of God.
Yeah, but what? Yeah, but what I'm also trying to say, it's not an accessible God, right? Because, well, it is an accessible God. Sorry, I'll take that back. But that's where you also get the whole aspect of the Trinity, right? So there's more aspects to God than just the Almighty, right? You have the Son who represents His human flesh form.
Yes,
Then you have the Holy Spirit that represents, I guess the spirit in every person,
and the
or
strength
let
that
me
comes out from
rephrase, the breath of life in
it.
every person. And that's how I interpreted, I guess, the Trinity. But everyone has their own
But
interpretation
it's
of that.
interesting, isn't it? Because anchored in all of this, if we talk about the Old Testament, is Islam recognizes Jesus as a prophet. They do recognize the Old Testament, Moses, Abraham, and all these amazing characters and people that roamed the earth. And then they take, obviously through Muhammad, they take that in and then they have their direction, how they form their faith that comes out of it. Similar to our Christianity, we had through Christ, then had this formation, which is, I'll stick to what I know, I guess. When you look at Christianity, I find it quite amazing that it was built. on the suffering of God's Son on the cross and obviously the resurrection on the third day. But it was seen as, and when you read the stories of the early church, the horrendous deaths that a lot of the disciples and followers of Christ that wanted to spread the word, it makes for an unbelievable community, the early Christians, of extreme faith and belief in this amazing experience that they had or was shared to them of the living God, Jesus. It just makes it so much more intriguing how they were prepared to die, and some of them died. Have you heard some of the stories? How the disciples, the apostles especially, died? Have you heard some of the
Yeah.
stories?
You know what actually makes me amazed with Christianity, especially the early days,
Yeah,
how it spread without violence,
yeah,
right?
and they just stood there and they took it.
Yeah.
But it's
That's
still,
that's what amazed me,
yeah,
to have a religion spread without. And what I say by violence, it's violence initiated by the religion, because even Judaism does not have that in its history. That's what makes it so amazing to me.
here we go. I'll give you the list. Andrew, crucified. Bartholomew, beaten, then crucified. James, son of Alphaeus, stoned to death. James, son of Zebedee, beheaded. John, boiled in oil, but when that failed, he was exiled for his faith, died of old age. Judas, stoned to death. Matthew, speared to death. Peter, crucified, as we know, St. Peter, the rock, crucified upside down because he didn't want to be crucified upright, if I'm correct in that part. Philip crucified, Simon crucified, Thomas, he was speared in India, I believe, speared to death. And Matthias, or Matthew, I guess, stoned
Matthew.
to death.
Yep, not all of them are not very fun ways to go.
And so many of the saints, yeah, that have died through, what do you call it, persecution, isn't it? Or martyr, yeah, you're becoming martyrs. Is that what it is? You become a martyr when you die for your faith.
Yeah, oh, when you die for your beliefs, and
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. We're biased, aren't we, on this episode? But we can't hide away from, and that's for our listeners to decide hide away from our faith and what we believe in and where we feel our faith is. You and I share similar experiences. We are big fans of the idea of inclusivity. It's not about elitism, hopefully, in what we say. We're not here to say, right, if you're not, that isn't it Anakin Skywalker in Revenge of the Sith? If you're not with us, then you're my enemy or something, yeah?
Yeah,
I think we said that before. But the point is that we certainly never ever see it this way. I want to home in on another one. This sounds like Bible studies today, doesn't it? The Ten
yeah.
Commandments themselves. The Ten Commandments themselves, how they have built essentially a lot of the building blocks of Western society and rules in many ways.
Yeah, but you could also say it shaped a lot of the world, because
Yeah, touch and taste.
Christianity,
You're
while
right.
not directly everywhere, it's done a lot of shaping, for good or for bad. People can argue, but it shaped the world as we live in it.
It's interesting, the list, because when you look at the list in detail, you don't have to spend much time in being detailed. Like, a lot of them make sense. But the first three is where I talk about this evil that's feared, was feared. I don't like, and I'm not going to shy away from that. You shall have no other gods but me. You shall not make idols. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. I think they're very rigid and set that you have to respect God. That's how I see the first three. Do you see the first three that way?
Yeah, yeah.
And when we were talking about before, the example we gave about the Olympics that occurred in France, I can't see it any other way but breaking those 10 commandments.
And that's kind of why I had to walk away from watching, is
It's sad,
because
isn't it?
I felt like I was breaking one of those commandments
Wow.
just by watching it.
Now the next list, let's keep going. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Now that's interesting because we could go into a bit of history about Sabbath is a Saturday, is a Sunday. On the seventh day, the Lord rested, of course, in Genesis, book of Genesis creation story. Actually, the late, what was his name? I've forgotten his name. How can I forget his name that easily? What is it, Charlie Kirk? Yeah, Charlie
Yeah.
Kirk. I was doubting him. first name for a moment. The late Charlie Kirk used to have you switch, and it's an interesting one, switching off his phone and not having anything contactable. That was his day with his family. And that one makes sense in a way. That is a beautiful way of honoring God in a way, isn't it? Having a day where you're switched off, disconnected, and in a way you're remembering the Sabbath in that way, keeping it holy.
Well, one of the things even that like I had growing up was, obviously you don't work on the Sabbath. That's a given, but that also extends to working the land. So technically, even if you wanted to play and dig, for example,
Gardening, yeah.
yeah. So say if you wanted to garden as for leisure, that was still taboo because you're working the land, even though it is a leisurely thing that you wanted to do.
Yeah, that's interesting that because I don't know. I think we're all going to be guilty of getting at the lawnmower.
Yeah, well, see, that's the interesting thing. As I started to get older and understand, kind of what I was taught to what I was starting to see, I always felt perplexed as to, why people were out doing like gardening, mowing the lawns, and other things like that. And obviously, you learn tolerance and acceptance very early on, but it was one of those first things that I can remember questioning other people doing.
I remember Good Friday used to be a sad day,
Yep.
like a really sad day. And no TV's on.
Yep.
And if it was on, if there was a Bible, a Jesus film, then it might be passed by mum and dad to have it on. But there was no music. We used to maybe visit someone, go to church, and that was the day pretty much. And we
Yeah.
didn't meet on that
Yep.
day.
Yep. Yeah, well, and also it was considered a day of extreme fasting.
Yeah. The commandments continue with honor your father, your mother. That one goes without saying, that one there. And as we're getting older and our parents are getting older, not the honor so much, maybe, but having patience for your parents becomes difficult.
Well, there's different ways to honor your parents as
Yeah.
well. Like you can't be beaten by your parents, for example, as an adult, and then be around for them. Like
Mm.
there are ways where you can show respect without taking a beating yourself.
You shall not murder. That's see, this is where we start to go things that make sense, really make sense. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. And finally, you shall not covet. It's an interesting list, isn't it? Do
Yeah.
you think a society could function if they were just the 10 laws of living?
It forms a basis of a rule set. I feel like it misses a lot.
What is a miss? That's why I'm asking that.
I feel like it misses more nuanced things on how to treat each other, and I
All
think
right.
that's where the New Testament comes in.
So could you argue about that most things can be corralled or parceled, I guess, in a way to one of them, one of the commandments? All right, okay, so let's go through it. Give me an example where it's missing.
I'll give you a good
Yeah.
example. Being greedy.
Is that covered under you shall not covet or
No,
not?
no, because you're not coveting someone else's thing. You're just a greedy person. You just want.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Let me
So
try.
I'll actually argue go through the seven deadly sins, and I
Yeah.
don't think any of them
You
are
shall,
besides
you
probably
sh-
last.
what about you shall not make idols then? Isn't that kind of, in a way, because you're stolen? I don't know. What did you
Yeah, but you see what I mean? Like, and that's why we have the deadly sevens.
Wait a sec. Wait a sec. What did you just say? I've forgotten after all that. What did you just say? What was the
The
example?
seven deadly sins
No, no, no. Before that, what was your example?
of greed.
Greed, greed. It was greed. Yeah.
See, it's. I mean, you can put it. You can say, oh, maybe it forms under covet, or maybe it's greed. It forms greed under stealing, right? Or other places. Like it can, but it can't, and that's why I say it forms the basis, but it misses a lot of the interaction between people.
What was Jesus' most important?
Or love others as you love yourself.
Love the Lord your God before your heart, before your soul, and before your mind. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the that
And
that
then
falls.
love your neighbor and love your neighbor
Yeah,
as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. So it doesn't say about forgetting, yeah, when he says that as well. Going back to what you said before. True?
yeah, because if and I'll argue if he wanted us to forget, he would have said that.
Yeah.
Right? That's why I say it's very important. Like, I don't think as turning the other cheek as a weakness, right? They're all elements of strength, but it gets interpreted as weakness, and that's the concerning part.
Yeah, that's you can go deep with this stuff, can't you?
Yeah,
Yeah. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you.
yep,
Golden rule, Matthew 7:12, Luke 31.
yep.
Do unto others as you would have done.
And see what I mean, like where the New Testament really like focuses on that interhuman kind of relationships. Because I feel the Old Testament sets up I guess, the relationship with God really well, right? But the New Testament still works on that, but also focuses on how you can achieve a better relationship on how you treat others as well.
It's also in the Quran, to do unto others. Or it says that Muslims to treat others as they would like to be treated, even if they must suffer through negative treatment. The Quran commands. This is me Googling it,
Yeah.
so I might be corrected by listeners. The amnesty Prophet Muhammad offered to his Meccan persecutors personifies this teaching.
Was that while he was in Mecca?
Yeah.
That I believe that's one of his earliest teachings.
And also in your hadith, as you would have people do to you, do to them, and what you dislike to be done to you, don't do to them. Yeah?
Yep.
What do you think? It's deep, eh?
Well,
Yeah.
exactly. It's a further expansion from that Old Testament mantra. That's how I feel.
It's so similar, isn't it? A line. Maybe
Well,
it'd be that it is the golden rule. Imagine there would be peace on earth, wouldn't there?
yeah, you'd think, but we're still not there.
We don't follow that mantra, like you said. That's the name of
Well,
the episode, isn't it? I think that's what it is.
no, you know what? An eye for an eye is just too easy. It's the path of least resistance.
Yeah. So
You
the
know.
golden rule. Yeah, the golden rule.
Yeah.
Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Would that work for everything?
It works. It works for a lot. But you see, now where it doesn't work is for people who are not mentally fit, right?
Yeah.
Because when you're not mentally fit, right, you're willing to endure horrible
Pain.
pain, and then that means you're allowed to inflict it on others, right? Because if you're
Yeah.
willing to endure it, you can inflict it then.
Yeah. I guess in the Bible, when someone was mentally unfit, what did Jesus do? Because there are examples of people with demons, yeah? Is that what that is, in a way? Is that
Well,
what
yeah, that's how it was treated, say, like in
Yeah.
in the earlier days, and I'm going to say probably up until the 1800s, 1700s.
So if you were the leader of, here's one for you. We'll start off with Israel, and you really wanted to follow Jesus' way. You're Jewish, but let's say you did. Okay, you said that's it. I'm going to follow exactly what Jesus says I must do. What would you be doing right now? You're the leader. You're Benjamin Netanyahu, and Jesus spoke to you in a dream. What would he be doing different? Would he be doing anything different?
That is a very hard question to answer.
Because then I'm going to ask the same question. If you were a leader of a mass and you were in that, and Jesus came and visited you, and you were going to follow the exact footsteps of Jesus, what would you be doing if you were a mass? So it works both ways, yeah?
Yeah, well, looking at it from Israeli point of view, you know, and to follow in Jesus's footsteps in terms of his teachings and things like that, I would argue that his teachings would lead to the path of, do we need to bomb the cities to remove Hamas leaders, right? And this is everywhere where it's happened. That's the question that you would ask yourself. Does this destruction need to happen? Do these killings need to happen? Right? Because there's always collateral damage, right? And that's the question that should be asked. And then when you flip on the other side, it it almost comes to the same kind of same line. Should we be harboring these hostages that we've taken? Should we just let them free so that we can have a road to peace? But then you can all then. But the hardest part is trust at the end of the day.
Well, they say that Bill Clinton had Yasser Arafat in Camp David, and the outcome of that, out of frustration, was he just would not cave in in order to have a state of Palestine. He was very disappointed by that. And that then followed through with Hillary Clinton, who had a similar, who happens to be Bill Clinton's wife, of course, who had a similar frustration in not getting Yasser to obviously meet certain demands so that there would be a state of Palestine. That's right, a state of Palestine, and be led by Yasser Arafat. So where do you go from there if what you perceive as the enemy is uncompromising?
Yeah, it's hard to approach. I guess when it comes to these kind of situations, you can only control your own actions. All right, so I guess the best course with an uncompromising person is to leave that person be. So and not, I guess, agitate the situation. And if anyone was to agitate, it wouldn't come from like my side of the fence, so to speak.
Yeah, I was trying to find there is somewhere in the Bible, it's not in Psalms. I was looking in Psalms where there is this idea of, like you're saying about, worry about what you can control, not the controlling of others and their destination or their way they feel. He who is slow to, this is what I was looking for, but he who is slower to anger is better and more honorable than the mighty soldier in this case, and he who rules and controls his own spirit than he who captures a city. That's from Proverbs 16:32.
Yeah.
But there is one in the Old Testament about, and it's a really nice one, and it's actually a good mantra, if you want to call it, about just worrying about yourself. I'm going to find it for next episode. It's almost a prayer I've seen said by people.
We could have it as a intro to all our episodes.
Yeah, it's a really nice one. I'm interested if any of our listeners can come back with the possibly the Bible reference that I'm after. It's difficult, isn't it? Because as human beings, we do desire and we can't let go of. We want to have a positive sometime, but it can come across as argumentative opinion or viewpoint because we really believe in something, but we know we can't control it, and then it makes us more frustrated.
Yeah, I guess the mindset is I have paradise in my mind, and why won't you believe my paradise?
Yeah, where did you get that one from? Is that another
That's my own.
This is another of these paper ones you come up with, is it?
That
Yeah,
one's
is that right?
that one's all me.
That is all yours, yeah?
Yeah, but there is the train of thought that, and this is definitely not my thought that every person is an island in their own, and they're alone in their own mind. So where I guess I extrapolated what I said previously is, in your mind you see paradise, but you can't project that onto someone else.
And very deep. Explain it again because that was worthwhile.
In your so in your mind, what you're seeing and
Yeah.
understanding,
Yeah.
you can never fully project that onto someone else.
Don't fully project, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
otherwise
because
we'd all be in jail for murder.
well, not even no, but not even that. Even if you've got like the most beautiful thing, keep in mind what you're limited in. You like, I guess the main way of communicating that we have is our voices, and that's extremely limiting.
Well, I found on Facebook, and I think it's something like this. It mustn't be a Bible. I'm sure I saw it as this is a prayer. Someone on Facebook. Dear God, please free my mind from the worries I can't control. Give me rest from the stress. That's not it. There was another one. I can't find it. It's really annoying me. I can't. Yeah, you don't know what I'm talking about.
I'm not very good with prayers. Like I know the prayers that I learned during studies and stuff, but I'm not very good with
You're
prayers
not
at all.
one for praying as such, but you're more of a the expression of prayers through your actions. You see it. Is that a good
Yeah,
way of putting it?
yep, yeah.
It's a beautiful
I
way
think
of looking at it.
yeah, for me, my day-to-day life is a prayer. I try, um, and I guess be as humble and I guess follow the like. So, say for example, like, look, when I say to someone, "Oh, I'm praying for you," right? What I mean by that is I go out of my way to make sure that I have the best day in terms of my happiness, and I try to make the best day that I can. Mainly because they're like, if someone's having a tough time, I can be there because I've made myself have such a good day to support them when they're not having a good day.
That's a really interesting perspective. I find in prayer that it problem with us as human beings, we forget things and we get blindsided by our own emotions a lot of the times. Well, I do anyway, and I know
Yep,
most
yep, that's very
people
true.
that I know. So take, for instance, the Our Father, the most well-known prayer, possibly, as Hail Mary obviously would be a contender. But the lines of forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us, and lead us into temptation, but deliver us from evil. I just feel those lines, there's so much more in that prayer course in the first half, but it's just a reminder I need every day, if I don't pray every day, to forgive others, to not be led by temptation, to ask God to deliver me away from evil. Like, I need to say that often enough to remind me, because I am guilty of forgetting that, to forgive, to not be led into temptation.
Yeah, and also when you look at especially those sections that you've singled out, name a person who hasn't been tempted in their life.
Yeah, and
For
temptation
for
in
example.
sin is any sin. And we mean any sin, any act that is unkind towards another human being.
Yep.
Alone, is more than that, of course.
Yep. Yep.
But when you think about it, we're all guilty of that. It could be just talking bad about someone at work,
Yep.
whether we like it or not. That is seen in God's eyes as sin. Yeah.
It depends on the conversation.
Oh, yeah, of course. You could be talking not bad about someone, but you could be certainly expressing a concern about somebody. That's different, isn't it?
For me, I always look at a conversation. I class it in three ways.
Yeah.
Is it gossip? Is it small talk? Or is it
Yeah.
like bigger picture? And what I always try and do is, like, say for example, if it's talk about gossip, okay,
Yeah.
I try and push that towards a higher level of conversation. So say for example, if someone's talking negative about someone, I try and push that towards an idea for how to improve the situation or find a solution, rather than dwell on that negativity. I mean, sometimes you do got to dwell on it, so that way it gets the creative juices flowing, so to speak, for that solution. But yeah, you want to kind of elevate out of that low level thinking to a higher level of thinking.
I think a lot of the times it's easier to be negative than positive, and I'm guilty as charged for that. I think it's boring when you're not.
Well, if you don't know sadness, how do you know happiness?
I think a lot less conversations happen if there's no negativity. It's sad saying that, of course. I'm not saying that's what we should be, all negative and sharp and very cranky, but conversations flow easier, don't they, for most people? Being negative or complaining or whinging about someone or work or neighbour or whatever it be.
An interesting thing, all right? Have two conversations, all right? Have a conversation first where you're talking positively about someone, all right? And
Yeah.
notice that not people won't take notice unless it's the person that you're talking to.
Hmm.
Then change the tone of the conversation and then start talking negatively about someone, right? And you will watch how people around you would perk up and start, I guess, not necessarily contributing, but they'll be listening to your conversation. And everyone's guilty of that. Like even I'm guilty of that. And I try not to be, but even I'm guilty of it.
Oh yeah, I'm mentioning it based on myself, to be quite honest. I think you've seen I'm very guilty of being negative and whinging too much.
Just
See, I'm
remember,
a
he
cranky.
without sin.
Yeah, well, I'm certainly let he without seeing cast first stone. I think for me it's a boulder, it's not a stone, to be quite honest.
Hmm.
Looking at it in a way, it's a big boulder, possibly. I've really
Yeah.
enjoyed this episode. We were starting off looking at the news, but I've enjoyed how we've gone a bit deep into our own faith or perspective on faith. I do think what comes out of it is that you and I certainly have had that discussion where we certainly don't necessarily always have to have the same approach to our faith. We can certainly respect our different way of achieving our connection with God. And equally, we need to respect and be inclusive. We did mention the rainbow in today's episode. I'm glad we did look at it and we didn't shy away from questioning what the rainbow means, and especially in its modern day context. to look at it and to, for a moment, challenge whether there was an untoward perspective. I thought you beautifully summed it up when, Peter, you looked at it in the context of inclusive. Yeah, Peter, you were saying inclusiveness. It was a beautiful way of putting it, and reading further as we were talking tonight, it makes sense. But we did challenge in today's episode the very sheer fact that we don't have to be afraid to say, as you said, you walked away if there's something that goes against our faith or belief system or value system. We should have the courage and conviction to walk away. The example being the Olympics, the French Olympics, the freedom to be able to say, no, I don't support that. It's against my faith or what I believe or what it's trying to represent. To be courageous enough to say, as you said today, no, I just chose not to view it. I walked away. Is that right, Peter?
Yeah. I believe I also boycotted most of the Olympics as well because
As
of
a
that.
result, yeah. I remember you saying that at the time. Yeah, a lot of people did, believe it or not. Totally, to me, in my opinion, is in line with yours. Totally unnecessary and disrespectful. Christianity does, in modern day context, seem to be an easier scapegoat, less fear of the ramifications of possibly isolated individuals that might go too far in response, not meaning that only Christians have a sense of control and other religions don't. That's not the case at all. We do remember in the 80s, let's not forget the IRA, where they went crazy, if that's the word to use. Do you know about the IRA, of course, Peter?
Yeah.
The bombs that were going off. They're Christians.
Yep. They were Catholic, actually.
Sorry?
They were Catholic.
Yeah, let he without sin cast the first stone. So don't start stereotyping any religion. That's our point today and saying, oh, yeah. I've heard that argument used and I kind of danced around it intentionally about saying, oh, they don't make fun of Muhammad because, someone would react straight away. No, it's not react as in violence. I think a lot of Muslims would be a lot more outspoken. They're courageous. And
That's correct. Yeah, exactly. You never it doesn't say anywhere in the teachings where you can't speak and defend false narratives. So you can defend yourself.
yeah, I think that's what's amiss, that courage, that conviction. I mean, look at Hollywood. So many actors are too afraid to say they believe in God. The worried what it might do to their career.
Yeah, exactly.
And any that do, they get isolated at the moment. There's almost a fear that they do. Well, I don't know if it's a conspiracy or not. I was hoping to wrap it up at the moment, but certainly I'm enjoying this episode. I don't know how to end it, to be quite honest, because there's just so much you can go into this. And I do encourage listeners, don't listen to just from today's episode, just a minute of us talking and then get us out of context, because we do want to emphasize that whoever you are, whatever faith you have, whatever sexuality you have, or whatever way you live your life, let he without sin cast the first stone. So we're not here to judge on this show, and we're not here to be exclusive. We're hoping to be inclusive. Is that a good way to wrap it up, Peter?
Definitely it is. Perfect.
Yeah, so on that note, my name is Robert, and with me is
Peter.